The F-1 engine produced 1.5 million pounds of thrust. 5 of them strapped to the base of a Saturn V generated, by some estimates, more power than all the rivers in North America combined. The sound alone could rupture eardrums at close range, which is why spectators were kept more than 3 miles away. And for a brief moment in human history, we built these engines routinely, launching them at a pace that seems impossible today. Then we stopped. And now, half a century later, the question everyone asks is simple. Where did the blueprints go? The answer is more unsettling than loss. We didn't lose the blueprints. We scattered them across archives, preserved them on microfilm, and stored them in climate-controlled facilities at Marshall Space Flight Center and Rocketdyne. Every technical drawing, every specification, every material call-out still exists. You could, theoretically, walk into those archives today and request them. But here is what we actually lost. We forgot how to read them. The story begins not with the triumph of Apollo 11, but with what came after. July 1969 marked humanity's greatest engineering achievement, and by 1970, the dismantling had already begun. Apollo 20 was canceled before Neil Armstrong returned to Earth. Apollo 18 and 19 followed within months. The final Saturn V launched in 1973, carrying Skylab, and then the production lines went dark. If you're interested in the real story behind space programs, the technology that actually flew, the decisions that never made the press releases, and how space became a strategic domain, subscribe to SpaceCluster. We focus on what was built, why it mattered, and where it really led. Now, back to the story. What happened next was not dramatic. There were no explosions, no congressional hearings, no public outcry. Instead, something far more mundane occurred. Accountants looked at warehouses full of tooling and jigs and fixtures, calculated the cost of storage, and made the obvious decision: scrap it. The tooling for the Saturn V was not simple. These were not generic machine tools you could order from a catalog. The F-1 engine alone required custom jigs for welding the thrust chamber, specialized fixtures for brazing the cooling channels, and precision alignment tools that took months to calibrate. The tolerances were measured in thousandths of an inch. The welds had to be perfect because a single flaw meant catastrophic failure at ignition. Rocketdyne had spent years developing these tools. Each one represented accumulated knowledge, trial and error, failures analyzed and corrected. The jigs themselves encoded information that never made it into the blueprints: how to hold a part during welding so it wouldn't warp from heat, where to apply pressure during assembly, which sequence of operations prevented stress fractures. And in the mid-1970s, facing budget cuts and storage costs, NASA and its contractors scrapped most of it, melted down for raw materials, or sold as surplus. The institutional logic was impeccable. We had been to the moon, the program was over, and storing obsolete equipment made no financial sense. No one imagined we would ever need to build another Saturn V. The blueprints that survived tell you what to build, but not how to build it. A technical drawing specifies dimensions, materials, tolerances. It shows you the final form. What it cannot capture is the process knowledge, the tacit understanding that existed in the hands and minds of the engineers and technicians who actually built these engines. Consider the F-1 injector plate. This component sat at the top of the combustion chamber, mixing liquid oxygen and RP1 kerosene in precise ratios to create stable combustion. The blueprints show 2,832 precisely machined holes, arranged in a specific pattern. The specifications call out hole diameter, angle, and depth. What the blueprints do not show is that during Apollo, engineers discovered certain injector patterns caused combustion instability, a phenomenon where pressure waves inside the chamber would build on themselves until the engine tore itself apart. The solution involved years of testing, thousands of hot fire runs, and modifications that were sometimes documented and sometimes simply became standard practice on the production line. The workers who built these injector plates knew things the drawings never captured. They knew how the metal behaved during machining, which drill bits lasted longest, how to inspect for microscopic cracks when a part looked right even if it measured within spec. This knowledge was not written down because it seemed obvious, routine, the kind of thing everyone on the floor simply knew. Then those workers retired. And that knowledge retired with them. By the 2000s, as NASA began planning return missions to the Moon, engineers started looking seriously at the Saturn V heritage. The space launch system would need powerful engines. Now the F-1 had already been proven. Perhaps it could be upgraded, modernized, reborn as the F-1B with improved efficiency and performance. So NASA did something revealing. They went to the Smithsonian and the U.S. Space and Rocket Center and requested permission to dissect museum display engines. They needed to understand not just what the blueprint said, but what had actually been built. The dissection process revealed immediate problems. Modern engineers, armed with laser scanners and computer-aided design software, discovered that the museum engines did not precisely match the archived blueprints. Not because the blueprints were wrong, but because production engines had incorporated field modifications, running changes, and improvements that were never formally documented. Welds appeared in places the drawings did not specify. Brackets had been reinforced. Cooling channels showed slight variations in geometry. Each engine was, in small ways, unique, reflecting the hand-built nature of Apollo-era production and the accumulated fixes that prevented failures. Reverse engineering a museum piece is not the same as having the production knowledge. The scanning process captured geometry but not material properties. Modern metallurgical analysis could identify alloy composition, but not the exact heat treatment process used in the 1960s. The brazing technique for cooling channels could be observed, but not the torch angle, the flame temperature, the timing that a skilled technician knew by feel. NASA engineers began reaching out to retired Apollo workers, now in their 70s and 80s, asking them to remember details from decades past. Some recalled critical information. Others had forgotten, or misremembered, or had never fully understood why they did certain things a certain way, because that was simply how they had been trained. The F-1B program moved forward, but not as a simple reproduction. It became a reinvention. Modern materials replaced 1960s alloys. Computer-controlled machining replaced manual operations. New manufacturing techniques promised better consistency and lower costs. The result would be an engine inspired by the F-1, sharing its basic architecture but fundamentally different in execution, and far more expensive to develop than anyone had anticipated. Ultimately, the F-1B effort was shelved due to cost and schedule concerns, a testament to how difficult it had become to resurrect capabilities we once possessed. The cost estimates for recreating Saturn V capability kept climbing, not because the rocket was technically impossible, but because rebuilding the industrial base, the supply chains, the specialized facilities, and the workforce expertise required investments that dwarfed the original Apollo program when adjusted for inflation. Modern aerospace had optimized for different missions: satellites, space shuttles, incremental improvements. The infrastructure for building super heavy lift vehicles had atrophied. SpaceX approached the problem differently. Rather than attempting to recreate Apollo-era capabilities, they started fresh with modern design tools, modern materials, and a vertically integrated production model that kept all critical knowledge in-house. The Falcon Heavy and later Starship programs benefited from not being bound to 1960s decisions, but they also required years of failures, explosions, and iterative learning to achieve what NASA had accomplished with slide rules and wind tunnels. The parallel is instructive. SpaceX succeeded not by recovering lost knowledge, but by being willing to fail repeatedly and learn from each failure. Apollo had done the same thing, but that learning process had not been fully documented. The institutional memory resided in people, not databases. The Artemis program, NASA's current moon initiative faces delays measured in years and cost overruns measured in billions. Some of this stems from political decisions, shifting requirements, and bureaucratic complexity. But a significant portion traces back to the simple fact that we are rebuilding capabilities we once had and abandoned. The Space Launch System uses RS-25 engines, descendants of the Space Shuttle main engines, themselves derivatives of Apollo-era technology. These engines are well understood, thoroughly documented, and still difficult to produce. The manufacturing rate is slow, the costs are high, and the supply chain is fragile. We know how to build them, but the industrial ecosystem that made them routine no longer exists. This is not a uniquely American problem. The Soviet Union faced similar challenges with their N-1 moon rocket, though their situation was more dramatic. The N-1 used 30 NK-15 engines in its first stage, a clustering nightmare that contributed to 4 catastrophic failures. After the program's cancellation, the Soviets also scrapped their tooling and infrastructure. Decades later, when Russia sought to recover N-1 technology for the Soyuz 2 program, they discovered that even with blueprints and some surviving hardware, the manufacturing knowledge had evaporated. The NK-33 engines that eventually flew were not new production, but refurbished engines that had been built in the 1970s and stored. Attempts to restart production revealed the same tacit knowledge gaps that NASA encountered with the F-1. The difference was that Soviet documentation had been even less thorough than American records. The N-1 program operated under intense secrecy, with information compartmentalized between design bureaus. When the program ended, much of that information was classified and then simply lost in the chaos of institutional reorganization. Some blueprints were destroyed. Others were archived in facilities that no longer existed after the Soviet collapse. But even with perfect documentation, the problem remains. Complex manufacturing cannot be fully captured on paper or in digital files. A blueprint is a map, not the territory. It tells you where to go, not how to get there. Modern manufacturing tries to address this through process documentation, quality management systems, and digital work instructions that capture far more detail than Apollo-era practices. Computer numerical control machines execute operations with precision and repeatability that manual machining cannot match. Additive manufacturing, 3D printing of metal parts, promises to simplify production of complex geometries. Yet even with these advances, aerospace programs still face the same fundamental challenge. Building something new requires learning, and learning requires time and failure. The institutional knowledge that makes production routine only develops after years of actually building the hardware, solving problems, and refining processes. We could rebuild the Saturn V today. The blueprints exist, the physics is understood, and modern technology would make many aspects easier. But it would not be a simple matter of following instructions. It would require reinventing the production processes, relearning the failure modes, and rebuilding the supply chains. The cost would be astronomical, likely exceeding the development of an entirely new rocket designed with modern tools and methods. This is what we actually lost. Not the knowledge of what to build, but the knowledge of how to build it efficiently, reliably, and repeatedly. We lost the industrial ecosystem, the workforce expertise, and the institutional memory that made Apollo possible. The implications extend beyond nostalgia for past achievements. As we contemplate returning to the moon, establishing Mars colonies, and building infrastructure in space, we face a choice about how to preserve and transfer knowledge. Digital archives capture more information than ever before, but they still cannot fully encode the tacit understanding that comes from hands-on experience. Aerospace companies now worry about workforce aging and knowledge transfer. Senior engineers who remember the Space Shuttle program are retiring. The generation that built the International Space Station is approaching retirement age. Each departure takes with it knowledge that may not be fully documented, insights that seemed too obvious to write down, and problem-solving approaches that were learned through experience. Some companies have implemented mentorship programs, pairing junior engineers with veterans to transfer knowledge before it is lost. Others use video documentation to capture not just what is done, but how and why. Still, others rely on maintaining continuous production, ensuring that the learning never stops and the knowledge remains active rather than archived. But these are partial solutions. The fundamental tension remains between the cost of maintaining capabilities we do not currently need and the cost of rebuilding them when we do. Storage is expensive. Maintaining production lines without orders is expensive. Keeping specialized workers employed during gaps between programs is expensive. So we make the same calculation that led to scrapping the Saturn V tooling. We accept that some knowledge will be lost, and we will pay to recreate it later when needed. This seems rational in the short term, but the long-term costs compound. Each time we abandon a capability and later rebuild it, we pay not just the direct development costs, but the opportunity cost of what we could have achieved if the capability had been maintained. Consider an alternate history where Saturn V production had continued at even a minimal rate. 1 or 2 launches per year, enough to maintain the workforce and supply chain. The tooling would have been preserved, improved, and modernized. The production knowledge would have been transferred to new generations of workers. The cost per launch would have decreased through economies of scale and process improvements. By now, we might have launched hundreds of Saturn V missions. Lunar bases could have been established in the 1980s. Mars missions might have occurred in the 1990s. The infrastructure for heavy lift to orbit would be routine rather than extraordinary. This is speculation, of course, but grounded in the simple observation that maintaining capability is cheaper than repeatedly rebuilding it. Instead, we chose discontinuity. We achieved the goal, declared victory, and moved on. The institutional knowledge scattered like the tooling, preserved imperfectly in archives and aging memories. Now we rebuild slowly and expensively, wondering why it costs so much to do what we once did as a matter of routine. The Saturn V blueprints are not missing, while they are waiting in climate-controlled archives precisely where they were stored decades ago. But blueprints alone cannot build rockets. That requires hands that know how to read them, tools calibrated for the task, and an industrial ecosystem capable of turning drawings into hardware. We did not lose the plans. We lost the capability to execute them. And in doing so, we learned an expensive lesson about the difference between documented knowledge and living expertise, between having information and knowing what to do with it. The question now is whether we will remember this lesson, or whether future generations will find themselves reverse engineering our museum pieces, wondering why we forgot how to build what we once made routinely. The answer will determine not just how quickly we return to the moon, but whether human spaceflight becomes a permanent capability or remains a series of heroic one-time efforts, each requiring us to relearn what we once knew. The F-1 engines in museums are not just artifacts of past achievement. They are monuments to institutional amnesia, reminders that the most sophisticated technology is worthless without the knowledge of how to build it. And that knowledge, once lost, is far more expensive to recreate than anyone imagines when making the decision to let it fade away. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe for more stories where history, technology, and human ambition collide. Thanks for watching.